In a quiet village nestled between emerald green hills, there lived a little girl named Amara. She was smaller than most children her age, but what she lacked in size, she made up for in bravery. While others feared the dense mist that rolled down from the mountains, Amara was curious. She had heard whispers of a giant who lived beyond the hills, hidden deep within the misty forest. One evening, as the golden sun dipped behind the mountains, Amara decided to set out on an adventure. She packed a small satchel with a lantern, some bread, and her lucky wooden flute. She followed the winding path through the forest, her heart pounding with excitement. The trees stretched tall above her, their leaves rustling in the cool evening breeze. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the forest. Amara clutched her satchel tightly and stepped forward. Then, she saw him. A towering figure stood among the trees, his enormous silhouette blending with the mist. His skin was like rough stone, speckled with moss, and his eyes glowed like warm lanterns. His hair was wild, like tangled vines, and he wore a cloak made of woven leaves. He looked down at Amara, surprised to see someone so small standing before him without fear. "Who are you?" the giant's voice rumbled, shaking the air. "I'm Amara," she said, lifting her chin. "And I'm not afraid of you." The giant chuckled, a sound like rolling thunder. "Is that so?" Amara nodded. "People say you're dangerous, but I think there's more to your story." The giant studied her for a moment, then sighed. "Perhaps there is, but few have ever cared to listen." Amara took a step closer. "Then tell me." The giant's glowing eyes softened. "Very well, little one, but only if you are truly brave enough to hear it." And so, beneath the towering trees, as the mist swirled around them, the giant began to speak. Amara sat cross-legged on a smooth tree root as the giant settled onto the forest floor, his massive form causing the earth to tremble slightly. His glowing eyes flickered with something Amara couldn't quite name. Sadness, perhaps? "My name is Baku," the giant rumbled. "Long ago, I was not alone. There were others like me, great and mighty. But humans feared us, and one by one, my kin disappeared. I am the last." Amara's heart tightened. "But why would people fear you?" Baku sighed, his breath like the wind rustling the treetops. "Because of a mistake I made. Many years ago, I tried to help the village during a terrible drought. I gathered water from the river and poured it over the dry fields. But my hands are too big, and the water rushed too fast. Instead of saving the crops, I flooded them." Amara's eyes widened. "That wasn't your fault. You were trying to help." Baku nodded. "The villagers did not see it that way. They called me a monster and drove me into the misty forest. Since then, I have lived alone." Amara frowned, tapping her chin. "That's not fair. They should know the truth." Baku let out a deep chuckle. "And how will a little one like you convince them?" Amara grinned, a spark of determination in her eyes. "Just wait and see." She stood up and brushed off her dress. "Tomorrow, I will return. I'll find a way to show my village that you're not a monster. You're a friend." Baku watched her for a long moment, then gave a slow, solemn nod. "Be careful, Amara. Not all will listen." Amara smiled. "Then I'll just have to make them." As she disappeared into the mist, the giant watched her go, hope flickering in his lantern-like eyes for the first time in years. The next morning, Amara raced back to her village, her mind buzzing with ideas. She had to find a way to prove that Baku wasn't a monster. But how? As she entered the marketplace, she heard worried whispers. "The mist is growing thicker," an old woman muttered. "The giant must be up to something," a man grumbled. Amara clenched her fists. They were afraid of Baku without ever knowing the truth. She stepped forward and raised her voice. "You're wrong. The giant isn't dangerous, he's kind." The villagers gasped. "Amara, hush. her mother scolded, pulling her close. The giant is a threat. Amara shook her head. No, he's not. He tried to help us before, and we blamed him for a mistake. A few villagers frowned, hesitating, but the chief, a tall man with a stern face, stepped forward. And what proof do you have, child? Amara took a deep breath. Come with me to the forest. See for yourself. The chief's eyes narrowed. You expect us to walk into the mist, where the giant waits to crush us? Amara's heart pounded. If they refused to come, Baku would always be seen as a monster. She had to think fast. Then, an idea struck her. Give me one chance, she said. Let me prove that Baku is not dangerous. If I'm wrong, you can decide what to do. The village murmured. Finally, the chief sighed. Very well, little one. You have until sunset. Amara grinned. That's all I need. As the sun climbed higher, Amara hurried back to the forest, hoping Baku would trust her plan. Amara sprinted into the misty forest, her heart racing. She found Baku sitting beneath a great tree, his lantern-like eyes watching the swirling fog. The village chief and the others are coming, she panted. This is our chance. Baku's massive shoulders tensed. And if they still fear me? Amara reached for his giant hand and placed her tiny palm against his moss-speckled skin. Then we show them who you really are. As the sun began to sink, the villagers approached the forest's edge, their torches flickering in the mist. The chief stepped forward. Where is this kind giant, Amara? Before Amara could answer, the ground trembled slightly as Baku emerged from the fog. Gasps and murmurs filled the air, and a few villagers stepped back in fear. Then, to everyone's surprise, Baku knelt down. Slowly, he reached into his cloak and pulled out something unexpected. A handful of fresh fruits, carefully gathered from the highest branches of the forest. He placed them gently at the chief's feet. I do not wish to harm you, Baku said, his voice deep but kind. I only wish to help. The villagers hesitated. Then, a small child stepped forward, picking up a fruit. She took a cautious bite, and her face lit up with delight. It's sweet, she giggled. The villagers whispered among themselves. Had they been wrong about the giant all along? Amara smiled. Baku isn't a monster. He's a friend. The chief studied the giant for a long moment. Then, with a slow nod, he spoke. Perhaps we have judged too quickly. That night, for the first time in many years, Baku was no longer alone. The villagers shared stories, laughter, and the sweet fruits of the forest. And as the mist rolled gently through the trees, Amara knew she had done something truly brave, not just facing a giant, but teaching others to see with their hearts, not their fears. Moral of the story: Glowing Star true bravery is not just about facing danger. It's about standing up for what is right, even when others don't believe you. Fear fades when we take the time to understand. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Bedtime Story Nook. More magical bedtime tales are coming soon. Tell us in the comments, what lesson did you learn from Amara and Baku's story?